The words came out broken, barely a whisper in the darkness. "Please don't hit me." Victor Constantine froze, his hand hovering over the lamp switch. He'd been about to turn it on, unable to sleep, planning to go down to his office and review the shipping manifests that had been bothering him all evening. But those 4 words, spoken in a voice thick with sleep and terror, stopped him cold. His wife of exactly 3 weeks, was still asleep. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady but shallow. She was dreaming. And in that dream, someone was hurting her. "Please," she whimpered again, her body curling into itself beneath the silk sheets. "I'll be good. I promise I'll be good." Something Victor had never felt before cracked open inside his chest. He was a man who'd built an empire on fear. He'd ordered executions over breakfast. He'd broken men twice his size without blinking. He'd inherited his father's organization at 23 and expanded it into something that made even the old families nervous. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Grown men stuttered when he asked them simple questions, but watching his wife, this gentle woman he'd married in what was supposed to be a simple business arrangement, flinch away from invisible blows in her sleep, he felt something he didn't have a name for, something that made his hands shake and his jaw clench so hard his teeth ached. Elena whispered something else, too quiet for him to hear, and a tear slipped from beneath her closed eyelid. Victor pulled his hand back from the lamp, moving with the careful silence he'd learned in his youth. When being quiet meant survival, he dressed in the dark. Jeans, a black shirt, his shoulder holster with the Glock he'd carried since he was 19. Then he walked out of the bedroom, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a promise. The house was silent at 4 a.m. Their house, though Elena still called it your house when she spoke to him, as if she were just a guest in these sprawling rooms with their marble floors and crystal chandeliers. As if she hadn't become the most important thing in his world, without either of them planning it. He took the stairs down to the first floor, then kept going, descending into the basement levels where he kept his real office. Not the decorative one upstairs with its leather furniture and expensive art. The one down here, where the walls were soundproofed and the computers held encrypted files that could topple governments. His head of security, Marcus, looked up in surprise when Victor entered the operations center. "Boss, it's 4 a.m. "I need everything," Victor said flatly. "Elena's ex-husband, Bradley Morrison. I want his entire life story on my desk in 3 hours. Marcus's expression shifted from surprised to carefully neutral. He was good at his job, which meant he was good at not asking questions. "We did a basic background check before the wedding, as per protocol." "That was basic," Victor said, and his voice was quiet in a way that made Marcus sit up straighter. I want police reports, hospital records, witness statements, sealed court documents. I want his parking tickets and his credit score, and every woman he's ever dated. I want to know what he eats for breakfast and where he buys his shoes. I want to know everything." Understood. Marcus was already typing, sending out encrypted messages to their network of lawyers, hackers, and information brokers. "Can I ask what brought this on?" Victor was silent for a long moment, seeing Elena's face in his mind. That tear tracking down her cheek. The way she'd curled into herself like she was trying to become small, invisible, safe. "My wife had a nightmare," he said finally. "I'm going to make sure she never has another one." 3 hours later, Victor sat alone in his office reading. With each police report marked "no charges filed," and each hospital record documenting accidental injuries, the cold fury in his chest grew colder and sharper. Elena had been married to Bradley Morrison for 4 years. She'd filed for divorce 8 months ago. The divorce had been finalized 6 weeks before Victor's business associate Thomas Warren had suggested an arrangement. Thomas's daughter Elena needed protection and a fresh start. Victor needed a wife to satisfy his grandmother's endless nagging and present a softer image to some of their legitimate business partners. It was supposed to be simple. A business arrangement. A marriage on paper that would benefit both parties. But Victor hadn't counted on Elena walking into his study for their first meeting and looking at him with those wide green eyes, nervous, but determined. He hadn't counted on the way she listened when he talked. Really listened, asking thoughtful questions about his work, the legal parts at least. He hadn't counted on finding her in the kitchen at midnight, unable to sleep, and ending up talking with her until dawn about everything and nothing. He definitely hadn't counted on falling in love with her. The file in front of him told a story that made him want to burn the world down. Bradley Morrison, successful investment banker, pillar of the community, volunteer youth soccer coach, and behind closed doors, a man who'd put his wife in the emergency room 7 times with accidents that the doctors had clearly stopped believing by visit number 3. There were photos. Victor made himself look at each one, committing them to memory. Elena's arm in a cast. Elena's eye swollen shut. Elena's smile in an earlier photo, from before the marriage, bright and genuine. Elena's smile in a later photo, at some charity function, thin and brittle as glass. There were witness statements from neighbors who'd heard shouting but never called the police. There were therapist notes from court-mandated marriage counseling that documented Morrison's anger management issues and Elena's tendency to be provocative. Victor's hands clenched on the pages, crinkling the paper. There was a police report from 2 years ago when Elena had finally called for help. She'd had 3 broken ribs and a concussion. Bradley had cried, told the officers it was a misunderstanding, said she'd fallen down the stairs and he'd been trying to catch her, said she was emotional, unstable, that she'd been drinking. Elena had been too terrified to contradict him. No charges filed. And there, at the bottom of the file, was the most recent information. Bradley Morrison had been making inquiries, asking questions about Victor's business arrangement with his ex-wife. He'd been seen at a bar 3 nights ago, drunk and belligerent, telling anyone who would listen that no Mafia thug was going to keep him from what was his. Victor closed the file and sat in the darkness of his office. He thought about Elena upstairs, probably awake by now, probably wondering where he'd gone. She never asked him about his absences. She never demanded explanations or threw tantrums or made scenes. She was accommodating and polite and sweet, and that politeness, he was beginning to understand, was armor, protection she'd learned to wear to survive. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Alexei," he said when his cousin answered. "I need you to arrange a meeting. Bradley Morrison. Today. Make it clear that attendance is not optional." There was a pause on the other end. "Should I tell him what it's about?" "Tell him," Victor said softly, "that we need to discuss his ex-wife." When Victor returned to the bedroom, Elena was awake, sitting at the window seat in her nightgown, watching the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold. She looked over when he entered, and her smile was automatic, practiced. "Good morning," she said. "I didn't hear you get up." "I had some work to handle." He studied her face, looking for signs of her nightmare, but she'd tucked it away somewhere deep. "Did you sleep well?" Something flickered across her expression, there and gone. "Fine. Thank you. Elena." He crossed to her, and she tensed almost imperceptibly. It killed him, that tiny flinch she couldn't quite hide. "You were having a nightmare last night." Her face went carefully blank. "Was I? I don't remember. I'm sorry if I disturbed you." "Don't," he said more sharply than he intended. He softened his voice with effort. "Don't apologize. And don't lie to me. Please." She looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. "It was nothing. Just a bad dream. Everyone has them. You were begging someone not to hit you." The color drained from her face. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then she stood up quickly, wrapping her arms around herself. "I should get dressed. I'm sure you have meetings." "Elena." He caught her hand, gently, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. But she didn't look at him either. "I know about Bradley." She went very, very still. "What do you know?" "Everything." He waited until she finally met his eyes. The hospitals. The police reports. All of it. Shame flooded her expression, and she tried to pull her hand away. "I see. I suppose your people did their research. I understand if you want to, if this changes things. The arrangement we made. Changes things? He stared at her. Elena, what? I should have told you, she said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. Before the wedding. I know damaged goods aren't exactly what you signed up for. I understand if you want to end the marriage. I won't make trouble. My father was insistent that this was mutually beneficial, but I understand if... Stop. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me very carefully. The only thing that has changed is that I now understand why you sometimes look at me like you're waiting for me to hurt you. And knowing that makes me want to burn down the world for you. Do you understand? She blinked, confusion replacing the shame. You're not angry? Oh, I'm furious, he said softly, but not at you. Never at you. But I stayed, she whispered. For 4 years I stayed with him. Everyone always asks why didn't I leave sooner, and I don't have a good answer. I kept thinking it would get better. That if I was just better, if I could just figure out what set him off. Elena, nothing you did caused what he did to you. Nothing. She laughed, but it was a broken sound. You don't understand. I provoked him sometimes. I'd argue when I should have kept quiet. I'd forget things he asked me to do. I wasn't good at being what he needed. He needed professional help, and possibly prison, Victor said flatly. What he did not need was a wife to abuse. And what you need to understand is that none of it, not one single second of it, was your fault. Tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. Why are you being so nice about this? Nice? He almost laughed. Elena, I'm many things, but nice isn't one of them. What I am is yours. That's what marriage means to me, even if it started as an arrangement. You're mine, and I protect what's mine. Always. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He brushed away her tears with his thumbs. And I'm going to make you a promise right now. You will never have another nightmare like the one you had last night. Never. Because the man who caused them is never going to hurt you again. Victor, what are you planning? Nothing for you to worry about. He kissed her forehead, letting his lips linger against her skin. Trust me. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Whatever she saw there made her shoulders relax slightly. I'm starting to, she admitted quietly. Good. That's good. He stepped back reluctantly. I have a meeting this afternoon. Business. But tonight I want to take you to dinner. Somewhere fancy. Will you let me do that? You don't have to take me out, she said automatically. I know you're busy. Elena. He waited until she met his eyes. I want to take my wife to dinner. Say yes. A small smile tugged at her lips, and it was more real than any smile he'd seen from her before. Yes. Good. Wear something that makes you feel beautiful. I'll have the car ready at 7. The meeting was set for 2 o'clock at a warehouse on the south side of the city. Victor arrived 15 minutes early, which meant he was there when Bradley Morrison pulled up in his BMW, looking irritated and confused. Marcus and 3 other men were waiting inside. They'd set up a single chair in the middle of the empty space, lit by a hanging bulb that cast harsh shadows. Very theatrical. Victor usually didn't bother with this sort of staging, but today he wanted Bradley Morrison to be afraid. Morrison walked in trying to project confidence, but his eyes darted around the warehouse nervously. What is this? I was told this was a business meeting. It is, Victor said from the shadows. He stepped forward into the light and watched Morrison's face pale as he recognized him. We have business to discuss. Look, I don't know what Elena told you. Sit down. The command in Victor's voice made Morrison obey before he thought about it. He sat in the chair, then seemed to realize he'd just followed an order and tried to stand back up. Marcus's hand on his shoulder pushed him back down. I don't have to listen to this, Morrison blustered. She was my wife. What happened between us is none of your business. Victor moved closer, into the light. She was your wife. Past tense. She's my wife now, which makes everything about her my business. This is about her, isn't it? She's been lying about me, hasn't she? She's unstable. Always has been. You need to know what you're dealing with. I've seen the hospital records, Victor said quietly. All 7 visits. I've read the police reports. I've talked to your neighbors, your co-workers, the therapist from your marriage counseling. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Mr. Morrison, and I know exactly what you are. Morrison's face flushed red. She told you her version, I'm sure. Did she mention how she antagonized me? How she'd push and push until I snapped? Did she tell you she drove me to it? Here's what's going to happen, Victor said, as if Morrison hadn't spoken. You're going to leave the city. I don't care where you go, but you're going to go far away. You're never going to contact Elena again. No calls, no letters, no showing up at places you think she might be. You're not going to talk about her to anyone. You're going to forget she exists. You can't tell me what to do, Morrison sputtered. I have rights. She was my wife for 4 years. You've known her for what? A few weeks. You think you can just... I'm not finished. Victor's voice dropped lower, and Morrison's mouth snapped shut. If you violate any of these terms, if I hear that you've so much as said her name, I will make you disappear. Not kill you. That would be too quick. I'll make you vanish in ways that will have investigators searching for years. And before you disappear, you'll experience every single bit of pain you ever inflicted on her. Every bruise, every broken bone, every moment of terror. Do you understand me? Morrison tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. You can't threaten me. This is America. I'll go to the police. The police? Victor smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Please do. Tell them all about how a Mafia boss threatened you. Show them whatever recording device you're undoubtedly wearing. I'm sure they'll be very interested in opening an investigation into you while they're at it. I have 7 hospital reports that paint a very ugly picture. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on most of them. The color drained from Morrison's face. But more than that, Victor continued, I want you to understand something. I'm not threatening you because I'm a criminal. I'm threatening you because you hurt someone I love. If I were just a businessman, just a regular husband, I'd still find a way to destroy you for what you did to her. The only difference is that I have more resources to do it with. She's just playing victim, Morrison said desperately. You'll see. Give it time. You'll see what she's really like. She'll drive you crazy, too. Victor moved faster than Morrison could track, his hand closing around the other man's throat. Not squeezing, just holding. A promise. That's the last time you speak about her. Are we clear? Morrison nodded frantically. Victor released him and stepped back, disgusted. You have 1 week to leave the city. Marcus will be watching. If you're still here in 8 days, you'll discover I'm a man of my word. He turned and walked toward the exit, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Morrison? The nightmares you gave my wife? She whispered, please don't hit me, in her sleep last night. That's why you're still breathing right now instead of choking on your own blood. I wanted to kill you the moment I heard those words. I still want to. But Elena deserves better than having your death on her conscience. So instead, you get mercy you don't deserve. Use it wisely. He left without looking back. At 7 o'clock that evening, Victor knocked on the bedroom door. Elena, are you ready? Almost. Her voice was nervous, excited. When she opened the door, he forgot how to breathe for a moment. She wore a deep blue dress that brought out her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders in soft waves. She'd put on makeup, just enough to highlight her features, and she looked beautiful and uncertain all at once. Is it okay? She asked, smoothing down the dress. I wasn't sure what kind of restaurant. You're perfect, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Elena, you're absolutely perfect, she blushed, pleased and embarrassed. You look very handsome too, though you always do. He'd worn his best suit. The charcoal one she'd once mentioned looked good on him, though he doubted she remembered saying it. He'd remembered, though. He remembered everything about her. The restaurant was La Stella, the most exclusive place in the city. Victor had bought it 3 years ago as an investment, which meant getting a table was never a problem. The owner, Antonio, greeted them personally, showing them to a private balcony overlooking the city lights. "Victor," Elena said softly as they sat down, "this is too much. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said simply. "Let me spoil you, please." She bit her lip, then nodded. "Okay." They talked through dinner, and it reminded him of that first midnight conversation in the kitchen. Elena told him about her childhood, her dreams of becoming a teacher before she'd gotten married, and Bradley had discouraged her from working. She told him about the garden she wanted to plant, if that was okay, and the cooking classes she'd been thinking about taking. Victor listened to every word, watching the animation return to her face as she talked about things that made her happy. He told her about his grandmother, who'd raised him after his parents died, and who'd taught him that power without honor was worthless. He told her about his plans to move more of the business into legitimate enterprises, how he wanted to build something that could last generations without the constant threat of violence. "You'd be good at that," she said thoughtfully. "You're good at seeing the big picture, and you're fair with people, I've noticed. Your employees respect you. Most of them fear me. Some of both, maybe, but fear alone doesn't create loyalty. You have people who've worked for you for years. That's not just fear." He reached across the table and took her hand. "You see the best in people." "Not in everyone," she said quietly. I used to. I used to think everyone had good in them if you just looked hard enough. But I've learned better." "Elena, it's okay," she said quickly. "I'm not who I used to be, but I'm learning to be okay with who I am now." "And who's that?" She thought about it, her fingers tightening around his. "Someone stronger than I thought. Someone who survived. Someone who's learning not to apologize for taking up space in the world." "Good," he said fiercely. "Take up all the space you want. You belong here, in my life, in my home. You're not a guest or an arrangement or a convenience. You're my wife, and I—" He stopped himself, unsure if she was ready to hear what he wanted to say. "You what?" she prompted softly. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted. "I know that wasn't part of our arrangement. I know this was supposed to be business, but I can't help it. Every day I fall a little more. The way you laugh at my grandmother's stories. The way you've slowly been making the house into a home. The way you're kind to everyone, even Marcus, who terrifies most people. I'm in love with you, Elena, and I need you to know that. I don't expect you to feel the same way. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I needed you to know." Her eyes were bright with tears. "Victor, you don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens, whatever you decide about us, I want you to know that you're loved, you're safe, and you're cherished." She was quiet for a long moment, looking at their joined hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was so scared when my father first suggested this arrangement. I thought I was trading one controlling man for another. I thought marriage, any marriage, meant losing myself, meant being small and quiet, and always, always afraid." She looked up at him, and her eyes were fierce. "But you've never made me feel small. You ask my opinion. You listen when I talk. You made sure I had my own bank account and my own credit card, and told me I could spend whatever I wanted. You've never once raised your voice at me, even when I broke your grandmother's favorite vase last week. That was an accident. I know. You know. But Bradley would have—" She trailed off, then shook her head. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're not him. You're nothing like him. And I think I'm falling in love with you too. I didn't think I'd ever be able to love anyone again. I didn't think I had it in me. But you make me feel safe enough to try." Victor stood up and pulled her to her feet, right there on the balcony with the city spread out below them. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious. She made a small sound and kissed him back, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "Elena Constantine," he said, and she smiled at the sound of her new name. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you feel safe. I'm going to give you everything you ever dreamed of. I'm going to love you so well that you forget what it was like to be afraid." "I'm holding you to that," she whispered. "Good. Hold me to all of it. Expect everything from me. Demand everything. You deserve it all." They stayed on the balcony for a long time, holding each other as the city lights glittered below them. Eventually, Victor's phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. One word. Done. Bradley Morrison had left the city 3 hours ago, driving toward the Canadian border. He'd withdrawn all his money from his bank accounts and quit his job via email. By tomorrow, he'd be someone else's problem, far away from Elena. Victor deleted the message and pulled his wife closer. "Take me home," Elena said softly. "Our home." "Always," he promised. 2 months later, Victor came home from a meeting to find Elena in the kitchen, laughing at something his grandmother was saying. They'd been baking together, flour dusting the marble countertops, and something that smelled like cinnamon in the oven. "Victor." Elena's face lit up when she saw him, and she came over to kiss his cheek, leaving a small flower print on his expensive suit. She noticed and tried to brush it off, apologizing, but he caught her hand. "Leave it," he said. "I like it." His grandmother beamed at them. "You two are disgustingly happy. I love it." Elena blushed, but she was smiling. She'd been smiling more lately, real smiles that reached her eyes. She'd started her teaching certification courses. She'd planted her garden. She'd slowly been redecorating the house, making it softer, warmer, lived in. And she'd stopped having nightmares. Victor checked on her sometimes, late at night, watching her sleep. She didn't curl into herself anymore. She didn't flinch. She slept peacefully, deeply, safely. That night, as they lay in bed together, Elena traced patterns on his chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For everything. For being patient with me. For making me feel safe. For—" she hesitated. "I know Bradley left the city right after you had that meeting with him. I know that wasn't a coincidence." Victor tensed slightly. "Elena." "I'm not asking for details," she said quickly. I want you to know that I'm grateful. I spent 4 years being afraid of him, and then 8 months after the divorce, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for him to show up. And then, suddenly, he was just gone. And I could breathe again. So thank you. Whatever you said to him, whatever you did, thank you." He pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "I'd do anything for you. Anything." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I love you." They were words she'd said before, but each time felt like a gift. Each time felt like watching someone who'd been lost find their way home. "I love you too," he said. "My fierce, brave, beautiful wife. I love you too." Outside, the city continued its endless movement, indifferent to the small, perfect moment happening in the bedroom of Victor Constantine's mansion. Indifferent to the way 2 people who'd been broken in different ways had found a way to heal each other. Elena fell asleep in Victor's arms, peaceful and safe, and Victor stayed awake a little longer, watching over her, keeping the promise he'd made at 4 a.m. in his office. She would never have another nightmare. He'd burn down the world to make sure of it. But for now, holding her close while she slept without fear, he'd already won the only battle that mattered. 6 months into their marriage, Elena was in the garden when she heard the car pull up. It wasn't Victor's car. She knew the sound of his engine, the particular way his driver took the turns in their driveway. This was different. Unfamiliar. She stood up from where she'd been planting roses, brushing dirt from her hands, and that's when she saw him. Bradley Morrison stood beside a rental car, looking thinner than she remembered, his eyes wild and unfocused. He'd grown a beard that didn't quite hide how gaunt his face had become. The gardening shears fell from Elena's hand. "Elena," Bradley said, and his voice was pleading, desperate. "Elena, please, I just need to talk to you." She took a step backward, then another. Her phone was in the house. The panic button Victor had installed by the back door was in the house. Marcus and the security team were somewhere on the property, but the garden was vast, and she was alone, and Bradley was walking toward her. "Stay away from me," she said, and her voice shook, but she forced the words out. "You need to leave. Now." "I can't," Bradley said, and he sounded broken. "Elena, I can't. I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my friends. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. I had to leave the country. Do you understand? I've been living in a motel in Manitoba for 6 months, and it's all because of him. Because of what he did to me." "You did this to yourself," Elena said, still backing away. "You hurt me for years, Bradley. Years. And now you're facing consequences." "I made mistakes." His voice rose, taking on that edge she remembered too well. The edge that used to make her go very still and very quiet. "I know I did, but I loved you. I still love you. We could start over. We could go somewhere, just us, and start fresh. I've been in therapy, Elena. I've changed." "No." The word came out strong, clear. "I don't love you. I never want to see you again. You need to leave before..." "Before what? Before your mobster husband has me killed?" Bradley laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "I'm already dead, Elena. Don't you see that? He destroyed my life. The least you can do is talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I don't owe you anything." Elena's back hit the garden wall. She was cornered, trapped, and her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst. "Please, just go." "I drove 15 hours to see you," Bradley said, still advancing. 15 hours without stopping, because I knew if I stopped, I'd lose my nerve. "I just need you to understand. I need you to tell him to call off his dogs. You need to step away from my wife." Victor's voice cut through the air like a blade. He stood at the garden entrance, Marcus and 2 other men flanking him. He wasn't armed, at least not visibly, but he didn't need to be. The look on his face was murderous. Bradley spun around, and for a moment nobody moved. "Mr. Morrison," Victor said, walking forward slowly, deliberately. "I believe I was very clear about the terms of our arrangement." "You ruined my life," Bradley spat. "You had no right. I had every right." Victor's voice was soft, deadly. "You put your hands on her. You terrorized her. You broke her bones and her spirit, and you made her afraid to exist in the world. What I did to you was mercy." "Mercy?" Bradley's laugh was bitter. "You call destroying everything I built mercy?" "You're still breathing," Victor said flatly. "Yes, I call that mercy." Elena watched them face each other, these 2 men who'd both shaped her life in such different ways. Bradley, who'd made her small and afraid. Victor, who'd made her feel safe enough to grow again. "Elena," Bradley said, turning back to her, "please, tell him I'm not a monster. Tell him we can work this out." "No," Elena said, and her voice was steady now. Victor was here. She was safe. "You are a monster, Bradley. And I'm not afraid of you anymore." Something shifted in Bradley's expression. The desperation bled away, replaced by the cold rage she remembered too well. "You ungrateful." He lunged toward her, and everything happened at once. Victor moved faster than she'd ever seen him move, intercepting Bradley before he got within 3 feet of Elena. Marcus and the other men rushed forward. There was a brief, violent struggle, and then Bradley was on the ground, Victor's knee on his back, Victor's hand fisting in his hair. "You just made the worst mistake of your pathetic life," Victor said quietly. Elena stood frozen against the wall, shaking, watching as Marcus zip-tied Bradley's hands behind his back. The other men were on their phones, presumably calling the police. Victor looked up at her, his expression shifting from rage to concern in an instant. "Elena, are you hurt?" She shook her head mutely. "Did he touch you?" "No," she managed. "You got here in time." Victor said something sharp in Russian to Marcus, then stood up and came to her, leaving Bradley face down in the dirt. He cupped her face gently, searching her eyes. "You're shaking." "I'm okay," she said. "I'm okay. How did you know?" "The security system alerted when an unknown vehicle entered the property. I was in a meeting downtown. I broke every traffic law getting here." His thumb stroked her cheek. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He should never have been able to get this close to you." "It's not your fault." She grabbed his shirt, holding on. "Victor, it's not your fault." Behind them, Bradley was shouting something, his words slurred and incoherent. Victor didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on Elena, his hands gentle on her face. "The police are on their way," Marcus said. "Trespassing, violating the restraining order, attempted assault. He'll be locked up for a while." "Good," Victor said coldly. Then, softer to Elena, "Do you want to go inside? You don't have to be here for this." She looked past him at Bradley, still on the ground, still raging at the injustice of it all, still convinced he was the victim. And she realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry. "No," she said. "I want to stay. I want him to see that he doesn't have power over me anymore." Pride flickered across Victor's face. "Okay, then we stay." They stood together, Victor's arm around her waist, until the police arrived. Elena gave her statement clearly, without shaking, describing how Bradley had shown up uninvited, how he'd cornered her, how he'd tried to attack her when she refused to speak with him. The officers looked at Bradley with open disgust. Apparently, his record had preceded him. "Ma'am," one of the officers said to Elena, "we're going to make sure he stays locked up this time. The prosecutor will want to talk to you, but with the violation of the restraining order and the attempted assault, plus his previous history, he's looking at serious time." "Thank you," Elena said. She watched as they loaded Bradley into the back of the police car. He was still shouting, still insisting this was all a misunderstanding, that Elena was lying, that Victor had orchestrated everything. Nobody was listening anymore. As the police cars pulled away, Elena felt something inside her unclench. Some knot of fear she'd been carrying for years, even during the months when Bradley had been gone, even during the nights when she'd slept peacefully in Victor's arms. She'd always been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to come back, for her past to catch up with her. Now he had, and she'd survived it. More than survived it. She'd stood her ground. "Are you sure you're okay?" Victor asked again, his hand rubbing soothing circles on her back. "I am," she said, and realized it was true. "I really am. He scared me, but he didn't break me. He can't break me anymore." "No," Victor agreed. "He can't. You're too strong for that." "I'm strong because you made me feel safe enough to be strong," she said, turning to face him. "Before you, I spent so much energy just surviving that I didn't have anything left to be strong with. But you gave me space to heal. You gave me room to remember who I was before him." "Elena, let me finish," she said. "I need to say this. You saved my life, Victor. Not just today, but 6 months ago when you married me, when you gave me a safe place to land, when you loved me even though I was broken." "You were never broken," he said fiercely. "Hurt, yes. Traumatized, absolutely. But never broken. You've always been whole, Elena. You just needed someone to help you see it." She kissed him then, there in the garden with Marcus and the security team, politely looking away. She kissed him with everything she had, gratitude and love, and the fierce joy of knowing she was finally, truly, free. When they broke apart, Victor was smiling. "Come on," he said. "Let's go inside. I think we could both use some of my grandmother's terrible tea." Elena laughed, the sound bright and genuine. It's not terrible. It's just an acquired taste. It's terrible, Victor said, but he was grinning. But she makes it with love, so we drink it anyway. They walked toward the house together, Victor's arm around her shoulders, Elena's arm around his waist. Behind them, the garden was peaceful again, the roses Elena had planted swaying gently in the breeze. That evening, after the statements had been given and the lawyers had been consulted, and Victor's grandmother had force-fed them both dinner and terrible tea, Elena and Victor sat together in his study. Their study, she corrected herself mentally. Their home. I need to tell you something, Elena said. Victor looked up from the papers he'd been pretending to read. What is it? When Bradley showed up today, I was terrified, she admitted. But I was also angry. For the first time, I wasn't just scared. I was furious that he thought he could still control me, that he thought he had any right to me. That's good, Victor said. Anger is healthy. Anger means you know you deserved better. I did deserve better, she said. I do deserve better. And I have better. I have you. She stood up and crossed to him, settling herself on his lap. He wrapped his arms around her automatically, his face nuzzling into her neck. Marry me again, he said suddenly. She pulled back to look at him. What? I know we're already married, he said, but that was business, a transaction. I want to marry you again, for real this time, with all our family and friends there, with vows we actually mean. With you in a white dress looking beautiful and me trying not to cry at the altar. You'd cry? She teased gently. I'd absolutely cry, he said seriously. Watching you walk toward me, choosing me, promising to spend your life with me. Elena, I'd be a mess. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you again. 100 times if you want. Once more is fine, he said, smiling. But I want to do it right. I want to stand in front of everyone we care about and tell the world that you're mine and I'm yours. I want my grandmother to weep happy tears and Marcus to look uncomfortable in a tuxedo. I want our wedding photos on every wall of this house. I want everything, Elena. With you, I want everything. Then let's have everything, she said, kissing him softly. Let's have the wedding and the photos and the life we both deserve. Let's have it all. 2 months later, Elena stood in front of a mirror, looking at herself in her wedding dress. It was ivory silk, simple and elegant, nothing like the overdone monstrosity she'd worn the first time she'd gotten married. This dress made her feel beautiful, confident, like herself. Her father knocked on the door. Elena, are you ready? Almost, she said. Come in. Thomas Warren had been skeptical of the arranged marriage at first, worried that he was trading his daughter from one dangerous situation to another. But he'd seen how Victor treated Elena, how she'd blossomed over the past 8 months, and his concerns had faded. You look beautiful, sweetheart, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Thanks, Dad. She turned to face him. Thank you for suggesting this arrangement. I know it was risky, but you gave me a chance at a new life. Victor gave you that, her father said. I just made the introduction. What he's done for you, how he's protected you and loved you, that's all him. And me, Elena said firmly. I did some of the work too. I chose to heal. I chose to trust him. I chose to love him back. Her father smiled. Yes, you did, and I'm proud of you for all of it. The ceremony was small, intimate, held in the garden Elena had planted and tended. Victor's grandmother was there, crying happy tears as predicted. Marcus was indeed uncomfortable in his tuxedo, standing as Victor's best man with a long-suffering expression. Elena's few close friends sat in the front row, beaming, and Victor stood at the altar looking at Elena like she was the only person in the world. When she reached him, when her father placed her hand in Victor's, she felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. Hi, Victor said softly. Hi, she said back, smiling. The officiant began the ceremony, but Elena barely heard the words. She was too focused on Victor's face, on the love and devotion written clearly in every line of it. When it came time for the vows, Victor spoke first. "Elena," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the garden. "The first time we got married, I promised you protection and partnership. Today, I promise you everything else. I promise to love you on your good days and your bad days. I promise to hold you when you have nightmares and celebrate with you when you accomplish your dreams. I promise to be your safe place, always. I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of my life. You've made me a better man, and I'm going to spend the rest of our lives trying to deserve you." Elena's hands were shaking as she spoke her own vows. "Victor, you gave me back my life. You made me remember what it felt like to be loved without fear, to exist without terror, to take up space in the world. You've been patient with my healing and celebrated every step forward. You've protected me without making me feel weak, and loved me without asking me to be anything other than myself. I promise to love you with everything I am. I promise to be your partner in everything. I promise to build a life with you that's full of joy and laughter and safety. You're my home, Victor Constantine, and I choose you. Today and always." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, again, Victor pulled Elena close and kissed her like he'd been waiting his entire life to do it. The gathered guests cheered and applauded, but Elena barely heard them. She was too busy kissing her husband, her love, her future. Later, at the reception, Victor stood up to make a toast. The room fell silent as he looked at Elena, sitting beside him in her beautiful dress, her face glowing with happiness. "I'm not good at public speaking," Victor began, and several people laughed because everyone knew Victor Constantine could command a room without effort. "But I need to say something about my wife. 8 months ago, Elena walked into my life as part of a business arrangement. She was scared and hurt, and trying so hard to be brave. And I thought I was doing her a favor, giving her protection and a fresh start. But the truth is, she saved me. She took this house that was just a building and made it a home. She took my life that was just power and business and violence, and she gave it meaning. She showed me what it means to be loved, really loved, not for what I can do or who I am in the world, but just for being me. Elena, you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that you chose me." He raised his glass. "To my wife, my partner, my everything." "To Elena," the guests chorused, raising their own glasses. Elena stood up and kissed him, not caring that everyone was watching, and the room erupted in applause again. That night, as they lay in bed in the house that was truly theirs now, Elena traced patterns on Victor's chest like she'd done 100 times before. "Happy?" Victor asked. "So happy," Elena said. "I didn't think I could ever be this happy. There were years when I thought happiness was just something that happened to other people. But here I am." "Here you are," Victor agreed, pulling her closer. "And here you'll stay. Always." "Always," Elena echoed. She fell asleep in his arms, peaceful and safe, with no nightmares chasing her into the darkness. And Victor stayed awake for a while, watching over her, keeping the promise he'd made at 4 a.m. 8 months ago. She would never be afraid again. He'd made sure of it. And together, they'd built something neither of them had expected, but both of them deserved. A love story that had started as a business arrangement and had become the greatest adventure of their lives.